Oh, hey there. So I wanted to talk to you guys about spiritual gifts because I talked about fruits of the Spirit, and that was interesting, and I kind of went through one by one. Now, there are several different accounts of spiritual gifts in the Bible, but what's interesting to me, okay, rather than going through every last one of them, is to see that this is the way that Paul said it, okay, and you can look it up in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, there's several places that it talks about spiritual gifts, but this is one of them. He doesn't go into great detail about which one is better or whatever. This is what he says. He equates the body of Christ to a body. So us, Christians, the church, as a body. And some parts of the body have a different function, okay? So like your whole body is not your eye, but without your eye you can't see. Your whole body is not your nose, but without your nose you can't smell. You know, your feet are important, but you can't see with them, and so on and so forth. Throughout every body part, we need all the parts of the body, and we can't really have the tongue be like, well, you can't talk, to the stomach. And you're like, well, without me, you're not going to have any sustenance, and so on and so forth. Now, he goes through this, and then he talks about all the spiritual gifts, several of the spiritual gifts, and he says that God distributes those to who he sees necessary. Okay, now I heard a pretty good example of this, and that was like a father going through a drive-through and then handing a bunch of food back to the most responsible child and saying, make sure to distribute this to all the children. If that person got the food and ate every bit of it and didn't share any of it, then the dad would stop giving the food to that child, because they would be like, you're not responsible with what I've given you. I didn't give it to you to keep. I gave it to you to distribute to who needs it, okay? And that's very important, that God uses the spiritual gifts that he gives to us so that he can give himself glory and so that he can help us along the way, okay? And when Paul goes through this list of spiritual gifts, you know, he says there's prophecy, and there's speaking tongues, interpretation of tongues, there's healing, there's miracles, there's knowledge and wisdom, and there's a list, okay? But when he lists all this stuff, then he says, but now I'm going to show you a more excellent way. And then that goes to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which is the love chapter. And he says, because if I have the gift of prophecy, but I don't have love, then I'm like a clanging gong or a clashing cymbal. Like I'm just making noise. If I can understand all mysteries and I don't have love, I am nothing. And he goes through this list and says, you know, if I can do all these amazing, if I have the faith to move mountains and I don't have love, then I'm nothing. And that's interesting to me, because I feel like everybody wants to do these miracles. They want to be like, look, the hand appeared on this person, or we gave sight to the blind, or whatever, and they want something that's going to some degree, give themselves glory. And yet, what Paul says is even more important than all these things, and God gives us gifts to share with other people, is that we do it in love, okay? That we help people in love. And whether or not it's some flashy gift, or whether or not it's what other people would consider to be a mundane gift, it's still a gift, and it's still necessary. And I was in Philadelphia many, many years ago, and I was doing a show, and I was walking around kind of their river walk or whatever, and I came upon these statues, and I forget exactly what they said, but one of them was basically like, this statue is dedicated to the pastor because he showed us spiritual insight. And then this statue is dedicated to the scientist because he showed us how things worked. And it went through several of these things. And the last one it said was, and this is dedicated to the laborer, and this is what I thought was interesting, because he wrought miracles. He was the one that did the work. He or she was the one that did the work, that actually made something come, that took something from a thought to real existence, took something from faith to being in the real world. And rather than us chasing the flashy things, maybe we should chase loving one another. Maybe we should chase loving God. And the spiritual gifts come, right? But I feel like a lot of people push it and a lot of people fake it. I've seen a lot of people that are, you know, doing things that are questionable. When I see somebody that introduces themselves as a prophet or puts that on their business card, I'm like, maybe you are. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to hate on you. I'm skeptical immediately. That's like saying, hey, I'm Honest John, and I'm here at the car lot. And you're like, I feel like with that introduction, you're not honest. I feel like I need to look out for you being a liar. And I feel like there's a lot of trickery going on. There's a lot of people that are trying to do magic. Like, more important than that, I think the key takeaway is, let's learn to love each other. Let's learn to love God and love each other, and use whatever gifts that we may have to do that well. Okay. Now, I've got a unique set of gifts myself. I can play music. I happen to be good making videos in some people's opinion. I can build things, and God's given me a mind for that sort of thing. And I think it was to put me in a place such as this, for a time such as this, so that I can love people, so that I can share His love with people, not for my own glory, but that just happens to be what I'm good at, one of the things that I'm good at. And if we look at it more like that, like, I want to use what God's given me for His glory, then I think that we're actually using it better than to say, look at these flashy things I can do, because there's just a lot of liars out there. And I get real skeptical about that. I'm not saying everybody is. I'm saying it's been overused. All right, love you guys.